Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Loki forces the god of mischief to pay for his crime of violating the sacred timeline. But why is Loki being held accountable while other more heinous Marvel time meddlers like the Avengers and Thanos are getting off scot-free? And thanks to Kiwico for sponsoring today's video. More about them in a bit. I mean, not to be a snitch who whines, Josh skipped school too. Actually, I never had the guts to skip. I spent senior skip day learning about Schrodinger. But I think we all felt Loki's bullshit alarm when he rightly pointed out that he only came into possession of the Tesseract because the Avengers traveled through time first, only to be told by TVA Justice Renslayer
what they did was supposed to happen. You escaping was not.
Yeah, a slap in the face worse than that wobble mouth he got in Mongolia. So is the TVA rigged? Are they all hypocrites? I think the answer to those questions tells us why Loki is really stuck with the TVA, as well as Marvel's plans to set up its broader multiverse, and how exactly Loki is explaining the leftover timelines created by Cap and Thanos in Avengers Endgame. So remember, in Endgame, the Avengers used time travel to steal the Infinity Stones, but they obeyed the Ancient One's warnings to restore the sacred timeline by returning the stones. But during that time heist, Loki stole the Space Stone and used it to teleport to Mongolia, creating a timeline that Captain America, by returning the stones, never truly pruned. And despite not at all pestering the Avengers, within minutes, the TVA arrested Loki. But the thing is, Loki wasn't the only loose end variant coming out of Endgame, because also during the time heist, 2014-era Thanos jumped forward in time to the present, leaving a timeline without himself or his forces. Similarly, Steve Rogers created a branch timeline by staying with Peggy Carter in the 1940s, at least according to the directors, unlike the screenwriters who say that old Steve actually lived in the background of the same timeline history that we've been watching. And if you think about it, doing nothing to help his best friend Bucky while he was being tortured by Hydra for decades, or help the Avengers, or prevent JFK's assassination or 9/11. I guess he was just chilling with the Eternals. But Loki's updated logic seems to suggest that Thanos and Cap did not create new branch timelines, that, except for Loki, everything that happened in Endgame left the sacred timeline intact, even if it means old Steve lived his life in that sacred timeline and never slept a day in his life over all the atrocities he let happen. But not only that, Renslayer says everything the Avengers did was supposed to happen. So why does the TVA have this double standard for Loki? Well, I have three theories. Theory one is that maybe the TVA does prosecute Thanos and Steve Rogers, but we just didn't see those trials, and Thanos and Steve had better defenses than Loki did. In the comics, Thanos is brought to trial before the universe's ultimate judge, the Living Tribunal, who found Thanos not guilty for snapping away half of all life, arguing that he didn't really break any natural laws. The screenwriters even revealed that they wrote a version of this scene that got removed from the movie.
And so we stuck the Living Tribunal in the movie. As Thanos and Doctor Strange came to blows, Doctor Strange blew Thanos' mind and sent him through the mindscape.
And if you listen closely in this Loki episode, Mobius seems to suggest that there is another cosmic authority that judges between right and wrong.
Oh, so that had the Timekeeper's seal of approval, did it? Well, I wouldn't think of it in terms of approval and disapproval. That's sort of a... Let's get back to escapes.
Approval and disapproval would be the jurisdiction of the Living Tribunal, and Thanos could have appealed beyond the TVA to this higher authority to get a ruling in his favor. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, if the Loki series ends up supporting the Endgame director's interpretation that Steve did create a new branch timeline with Peggy, in Loki episode 1, there is one background variant detainee that looks a lot like Peggy. Now, I'm not sure if it's her, but if it is, she might be getting arrested as a timeline violator, or really maybe brought in as a witness for Steve's trial. At which point, I can imagine Captain America charming the pants off the TVA and arguing that he was already removed from his destined path when he was frozen, and now, after his mission is complete and he pruned every branch like they promised they would, he deserves to restore his original life path. But if you don't buy that, theory 2 is that the TVA may genuinely consider the time heist and Thanos and Steve Rogers to just be part of the sacred timeline, but genuinely believe Loki is not part of it. Like, it may just be as simple as the timekeepers dictating that within this sacred timeline will be a little wobble involving a sloppy time heist that will all sort itself out at the end, because it is destiny for the Avengers to bring everyone back. It's destiny for Thanos to die, destiny for Tony Stark Stark to die, for Cap to end up in the past, and that is why out of 14,605 different outcomes, Doctor Strange could only see one victorious future, and that Loki escaping was just not part of that plan. I mean, really, we can consider this the Kevin Feige is the one above all explanation, and things just play out the way they do because Marvel Studios decided that would make for the most interesting stories, and that it's just more thematically satisfying to see Loki have to deal with illogical, unfair universal law. And thanks again to Kiwico for sponsoring today's video. Kiwico is defining the future of play by making it engaging, enriching, and seriously fun. They create cool hands-on projects and toys designed to expose kids to concepts in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Each monthly crate is designed by experts, tested by kids, and teaches a new theme through hands-on learning and fun. They believe in the concept of small today, big tomorrow. They teach kids problem solving on small projects today, and who knows what they can accomplish in the future. This month they sent me this Eureka box to make a hand-powered air pump that you use to blow up balloons. Happens to a lot of guys, but not to me. I never knew how to tie a balloon. There it goes. Oh, oops. Yeah, you can learn how to make giraffes and other balloon animals. So far, I've only learned how to do a snake that deflates real fast. Either way, it was really cool to learn about air pressure and pneumatic power while putting together this pump. So Kiwico wants kids to be fearless innovators and design projects to help them develop that muscle. And you can get 50% off your first month of any crate by going to kiwico.com/newrockstars, linked below and in the description. Yet, still, if Marvel is telling us geniuses at work to can it, which is fully in their right to do, why would they go to the trouble to open this series with a reconfigured Endgame sequence if they didn't want us to think about how this would all fit into Endgame's timeline logic? Which brings me to theory 3, the one I think is probably the most accurate. The TVA is full of shit, and that is the point. See, when Loki presses her, Renslayer gives circular logic.
Well, perhaps I should speak to these time keepers. Gods to gods.
I'm sorry, but they're quite busy
Oh, they are? What are they doing?
dictating the proper flow of time.
I see. Right, and then what do you do?
Dictate the proper flow of time according to their dictations.
Yeah, like Loki, we are given little reason to trust the authority of the Timekeepers. According to Miss Minutes, they interfered with an ancient multiversal war to smush the timelines into one sacred timeline, but by doing so, they picked winners and losers, and they set up this draconian system where those who step off their destined path, even by accident, like showing up late for work, are dragged through this traumatic legal process. And really, their whole mythology was cooked up by the TVA's in-house propaganda department. So Loki's right to consider this absurd. It's broken. These guys are not the good guys. And while Loki may have conceded his stone quest, he still has no respect for the TVA's rule of law and will betray them as soon as he can. Especially if all of this is just coming from Renslayer's dictations of the Timekeeper's dictations. And these beings are weirdly enshrined all over the place, but we never really see them in the flesh. In fact, these marching orders for what is and is not in the sacred timeline could just all be made up on the fly, coming from some old man behind the curtain. And now things are unraveling for the TVA. They're getting desperate, they're making mistakes because they are facing a crisis. Some Loki variant has been murdering Minutemen and stealing their reset charges. 6 in the last week, according to U92, which, by the way, interesting that they track their own time in days and weeks. So when another Loki variant, L1130, shows up, it makes sense that the TVA fears him and singles him out, discriminates him, doesn't really have a good answer for him, because every Loki represents a threat to their already flawed system. Now, the TVA calls each variant a Nexus event, the same term WandaVision used to describe the Scarlet Witch, because she is a Nexus being in the comics who can transcend reality. And I think that previous era of that multiversal war was the result of Nexus beings. And now the TVA fears another Nexus sorcerer will repeat the historical cycle and unravel the sacred timeline back into a multiverse. And they're worried it's gonna be a Loki variant. But while their sights are set on variant Lokis, they really should be worried about Wanda Maximoff upsetting that balance into a coming multiverse of madness. Support this channel by checking out our new Loki-inspired merch options, like the shirt Loki Out of Time at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss. Follow New Rockstars, and subscribe to New Rockstars for every question you need answered about Loki. Thanks for watching. Bye.